Aristotle. He is a great philosopher, and he wrote all of these works. Now, we know those ancient documents no longer exist. People started to make copies. For years and years and years, they're making copies of copies of copies. They're all gone. We find a copy. Guess how many years after the original document? 1,400 years. How about Plato, Aristotle's teacher? He pens all of his original works. Those works are lost. The originals are gone. So copies are made. We finally find this ancient document. It's 1,200 years between the original penning. These are the top works that we have in secular history. Everybody knows Julius Caesar, right? He wrote a work called the Gallic Wars. The original manuscript is lost. So it's copied and lost and copied and lost and copied and lost until finally we find an ancient copy after all of that, but it's been 1,000 years since the original manuscript. One more, most studied poems of all time, the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? Homer writes this poem, but the original manuscript is lost. We find an ancient copy dated 500 years after the original. These are the most significant and well-respected and authenticated historical ancient manuscripts that we have. Now, let's go ahead and do the Bible. New Testament. There's the Gospels. There's all the letters of Paul, the Pauline epistles. John off the island of Patmos, he writes Revelation and stuff. It takes about 70 years for all of those different books to be written and compiled into one work called the New Testament. All those original manuscripts are lost. So what happens? From the day that it was penned until the date of our first ancient copy of the entire New Testament, 100 years. 100 years. Come on! Our most trusted ancient manuscripts. Hundreds of years between the original and the ancient copy that we discovered. With the New Testament, 100 years. Now, when they're testing ancient documents, one of the other things they do is they test on the number of copies that you find. In other words, the similarity between copies is very important to determine accuracy. How many copies of Aristotle's works did we find? 49. I have here 49 pieces of paper representing the 49 copies of Aristotle's works. All right, so Plato's works. How many copies did we find? 7. 7 pieces of paper to represent each copy to compare. Julius Caesar, you'd think there'd be a bunch for old Julius. There is just 10 copies of his work. Now, let's go to Homer, which is only 500 years in between. Not too bad, Homer, you're looking good here. 643 ancient copies of Homer's work. Now I'm going to speak specifically to the Iliad. The accuracy, meaning when they compare word for word between all 643 copies, 95% accurate. Not too bad. It's the most well-preserved secular ancient document we have. The New Testament. Just 100 years from its original penning, we found 5,600 copies of the New Testament. 5,600. When they compared all of these copies to each other, guess what the accuracy was? 99.5% accurate. This is only in the Greek. If I were to add other languages, ancient, at the same time, within 100 years, just 100 years after the penning, I would have another 20,000 copies of the New Testament in other languages. When it comes to the manuscript, ancient manuscripts, nothing compares with the veracity and the accuracy of the New Testament. Pretty cool, huh?